It was Thanksgiving Eve, November 24th, 1971. A man in a dark suit, clutching a briefcase, walked with a quiet confidence into Portland International Airport. He approached the ticket counter for Northwest Orient Airlines and bought a one-way ticket to Seattle. The name he gave was Dan Cooper. What unfolded over the next few hours would become one of the most perplexing and enduring unsolved mysteries in American history. A story of a man who didn't just hijack a plane, but who seemingly vanished into thin air. Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 was a routine 30-minute hop. A Boeing 727 carrying 36 passengers and a crew of 6. People were settling in, thinking about their holiday plans, completely unaware that the man in seat 18E had a different destination in mind. Flight attendant Florence Schaffner recalled he was polite, almost unremarkable. He calmly ordered a bourbon and soda and lit a cigarette. Then, as the plane took off, he handed her a note. Thinking it was just a lonely businessman's phone number, she initially tucked it into her pocket. He leaned closer and said, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." Her blood ran cold. The note was chillingly direct. She sat beside him as he requested, and he quietly opened his briefcase just enough for her to see a terrifying arrangement of wires and red cylinders. It looked exactly like a bomb. His demands were precise. $200,000 in unmarked $20 bills, 4 parachutes, 2 primary and 2 reserve, and a fuel truck ready for the plane when it landed in Seattle. He was calm, collected, and surprisingly articulate. The flight crew relayed the message to the ground, and one of the largest law enforcement mobilizations in history began. For the next 2 hours, as Flight 305 circled Puget Sound, the FBI scrambled to gather the ransom money and the parachutes. On the ground, Seattle police worked to secure the airport, clearing the designated runway. To the other 35 passengers, this was just an inconvenient delay. The captain announced they were experiencing a minor mechanical difficulty that required them to burn off fuel before landing. They had no idea they were hostages in a high-stakes skyjacking. One FBI agent later remarked on Cooper's demeanor, noting he was almost professional, as if he knew exactly what he was doing and what the authorities were capable of delivering. He wasn't erratic or violent. He was a man with a plan. At 5:24 p.m., the plane finally touched down at Seattle-Tacoma Airport. The aircraft was directed to a remote, brightly lit section of the tarmac. An airline employee, carrying a heavy canvas bag filled with 10,000 $20 bills and another bag with the 4 parachutes, approached the plane. The exchange was made. Cooper carefully inspected the money and the parachutes. Once he was satisfied, he kept his end of the bargain. The 36 passengers were released, completely unharmed, walking off the plane and into the chilly Seattle evening, still mostly unaware of the drama that had just unfolded. But the hijacker, along with the captain, a co-pilot, a flight engineer, and 1 flight attendant, remained on board. The ordeal was far from over. Cooper's plan now entered its second and most audacious phase. He instructed the pilot to take off again, this time with a new flight plan heading south toward Mexico City. He specified the exact flight conditions. The plane was to fly at a low altitude, under 10,000 feet, and at a slow speed, just under 200 knots. Critically, he demanded that the landing gear remain down and the wing flaps be set at 15 degrees. Most importantly, he insisted that the aft air stair, the retractable staircase at the rear of the Boeing 727, be left down and unlocked during takeoff. The crew warned him that this was unsafe, but he was adamant. As the refueled jet roared back into the night sky around 7:40 p.m., it headed into a fierce storm raging over the Pacific Northwest. Rain and wind battered the aircraft. The remaining crew members were huddled together in the cockpit, separated from Cooper by a curtain. The last they saw of him, he was calmly tying the money bag around his waist. Around 8 p.m., a warning light flashed in the cockpit, indicating that the aft air stair had been lowered. The plane's cabin pressure fluctuated. Sometime around 8:13 p.m., somewhere over the dense, rugged forests of southwestern Washington, Dan Cooper walked down that staircase and leapt out into the freezing, stormy night. He jumped into nothingness, with $200,000 strapped to his body. No one saw him go. The pilots felt a slight change in air pressure, a bump, and then silence. Dan Cooper was gone. When the plane landed safely in Reno, Nevada, 2 hours later for a second refueling, authorities stormed the aircraft. They found it empty, save for the crew. All that Cooper left behind were his black clip-on tie, a tie clip, and 8 cigarette butts. This triggered a massive manhunt, the most extensive in U.S. history. A journalist's error in reporting the hijacker's name as D.B. Cooper instead of Dan Cooper created the legendary name that would stick forever. The FBI, along with local police and Army personnel, scoured the projected jump zone. They searched the forests, dragged the rivers, and followed up on thousands of leads. They investigated paratroopers, career criminals, and ordinary citizens who fit the vague description. But they found nothing. No body, no parachute, no briefcase, and not a single dollar bill from the ransom. It was as if the man had simply dematerialized. For nearly a decade, the case grew colder. The legend of D.B. Cooper, the gentleman bandit who beat the system, grew larger. Then, in February 1980, a surprising discovery was made. An 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram was on a family vacation, digging in the sand along the banks of the Columbia River near a place called Tina Bar. He uncovered 3 rotting bundles of cash. When his family turned the money over to the FBI, forensic analysis confirmed the impossible. The serial numbers on the $20 bills were a perfect match for the ransom money given to Cooper. A total of $5,800 was recovered. This discovery only deepened the mystery. The money was found far from the primary search zones. How did it get there? And more importantly, where was the rest of the $194,200? Was this a sign that Cooper had perished in the jump, his money scattering in the wind? Or did he bury it and simply never return? Over the years, the D.B. Cooper case has become a magnet for countless theories and a parade of compelling suspects. There was Richard McCoy Jr., a Vietnam veteran and BYU student who staged a near-identical copycat hijacking just a few months after Cooper's. He jumped from a 727 with $500,000, but he was caught, convicted, and later killed in a shootout with the FBI. Could he have been Cooper, getting away with it the first time? The FBI officially ruled him out. Then there was Dwayne Weber, a World War II veteran who, on his deathbed, confessed to his wife, "I'm Dan Cooper." She later discovered he had an old knee injury from jumping out of a plane and a history of crime. Another prominent suspect was Robert Rackstraw, a former Army paratrooper with expertise in explosives and a shadowy past involving stolen aircraft and check fraud. He fit the profile, but after extensive investigation, the FBI could never find conclusive evidence to link him to the hijacking. Each theory is tantalizing. Each suspect seems plausible for a moment, but none have ever been definitively proven. The Cooper mystery became a modern American folk tale. To some, he was a working-class hero, a Robin Hood figure who took on the faceless corporate system and won. To others, he was a reckless criminal who almost certainly died that night, a victim of his own hubris, lost to the unforgiving wilderness of the Pacific Northwest. For many, the idea of D.B. Cooper became more powerful than the man himself, a ghost story whispered in the skies. After 45 years of chasing leads, analyzing evidence, and interviewing over 1,000 suspects, the FBI made a stunning announcement in 2016. They were officially closing the active investigation into the D.B. Cooper case. It remains the only unsolved case of air piracy in American history. No arrests were ever made. No final answers were ever found. All that's left is the enduring image of a man who walked onto a plane, took a fortune, and disappeared into legend. Half a century later, the question still hangs in the air, echoing through the stormy skies over the Pacific Northwest. Who was D.B. Cooper? Was he a brilliant planner or just incredibly lucky? A cunning criminal or a desperate man? Did he survive the jump and live out his days in quiet anonymity? Or did the forest claim him that night? We may never know. The mystery of the man they called D.B. Cooper remains quite literally up in the air. Thanks for watching, and if you're fascinated by unsolved mysteries like this one, be sure to subscribe for more.